Există o tendință spre comoditate.
There exists a certain tendency towards an easy life. Peering at the mountains from the comfort of an armchair, you see them just the same. Why bother going out to see them if you can do so from your seat? Nonetheless, mountains need to be discovered on foot. You need to touch them with your hand. Only then do you begin to understand the nature of mountains. The very effort of going up a mountain disciplines the spirit, reveals limitations that you should know about. Of course, climbing in the high mountains is a challenge, a test that helps you go beyond your limit, because there are also difficult moments, moments where you lack oxygen, your heart is pounding at its maximum. You need to make that extra effort. Yet that exertion, that opportunity to read a page from Holy Scriptures, somewhere high up there, to discover the glorious Psalms in the light of God's creation, lifts the spirit, bestows nobility, endows the spirit with a degree of certainty. God is present here, in this creation, to which He gave a beginning. We humans would be incapable of creating anything like it. We are trying to organize youth days in the mountain for young Greek Catholics, to help them discover the beauty of mountains, to place them in a situation that necessitates that extra effort, the need to go beyond their physical limits. The outcome is intense. Young people say they will be back, that they will yet again climb the mountains.
Își promit că se vor întoarce, vor reveni la munte.
When he goes into the mountains, I tremble until he comes back. He had a predisposition to walk in caves, to which I also succumbed. He led me to a cave in which we had to crawl on all fours, whilst I was dressed in short white trousers. Believe me, I had a better figure then than now. It was nonetheless a trial, wading in mud in a cave that became ever narrower, with bats squeaking above us. It was then that I thought to myself, dear God, what had we got ourselves into? What was so nice about this? Much better to be out in the sun like everybody else. Why crawling in caves? At one point, we had to descend down some rope, and then, I remember, nothing to look forward to, but he said it with such love. Listen here, place your hands here, your legs over there, and move down as if you were going downstairs. Why are you making so many signs of the cross?
It's 2,000 meters, 136.
Florin was never shy. When guests came to visit us, he immediately approached them and searched their pockets. Everybody liked him.
That's a photograph from his nursery school days. Grandma will tell you, in our house, my wife is the storyteller.
But since you are also here, you tell the story.
Leave alone, my dear. I'm not taking her bread. But you tell them, darling.
All right?
I believe this is Florin at his nursery school, and the older one was at secondary school.
Speak louder, darling, because even I can't hear you.
Here we see Florin in 1964. He was born in 59, so he was 5 years old here.
Mother, dates are not relevant here. His brother is a year older, so the difference between them is only a year.
A year and a half.
Yes, he was on the verge of completing his nursery education and was about to begin his primary school, which was why I took this commemorative photograph of them both.
În memoria acestui fapt, i-am pozat pe amândoi.
Towards the end of their secondary school days, they were both Beatles, with large, dense hairdos. That was the fashion of the day. We have a saying, beautiful old granny and well-behaved child. Neither exists.
În numele Tatălui și al Fiului. Tatăl meu provine dintr-o familie greco-catolică și mama provine dintr-o familie romano-catolică.
My father comes from a Greek Catholic family, whilst my mother from a Roman Catholic family. As children, we were brought up, of course, more in the Roman Catholic Church, because the free Greek Catholic Church didn't exist in those days. And as a result, we attended our first catechism, Holy Communion, and even confirmation in Iași, in Moldavia, as we were less known there, it being our holiday destination.
Acolo, practic, eram și puțin cunoscuți. Noi locuiam la Turda în acea perioadă de timp și
at that time we lived in Turda. There was always a policeman from the Securitate in church who watched our every move. One day our mother was summoned by the Securitate. An officer asked her, "Do you not realize that you are in fact harming your children by taking them to church?" Mother replied, "I do not meddle in your children's upbringing. So don't you meddle in the upbringing of my children." She was so adamant that the Securitate never summoned her again. And we practically never had any problems with them.
Deloc la Securitate și practic nu am mai avut niciun fel de probleme. Mama lui și era bună? Da. De unde? Altivița mea. 2 și După aceea, sigur că am crescut.
Of course I grew up, and what one could describe as diverse ideas occupied my mind, so that for a couple of years I only attended church on important feast days. However, I later returned to the church once my students' days were over.
Practic, m-am reîntors la biserică. Au fost câteva momente importante.
There were several important moments. On one occasion, I went to a nursing home that, amongst others, housed blind people. I was feeding several people at the time, and suddenly, the one blind man receiving an apple stretched out his hand towards me.
Un măr, ceea ce aveam, ceea ce le dădeam, el a întins mâna,
Placed his hand on mine and said, "Thank you, Father."
Mulțumesc, părinte.
I wasn't a priest at that time. Those words made a great impression on me. I must admit that they were prophetic. I never thought about such things. I thought it too superior, something beyond me.
Este ceva prea înalt, prea departe de mine.
Niechaj żyje nam. 100 lat, 100 lat, 100 lat, 100 lat, niechaj żyje nam. Niech żyje nam, niech żyje nam. W zdrowiu, szczęściu, pomyślności, niechaj żyje nam.
Știți ce se întâmplă? El totdeauna a avut o atracție.
Do you know how it was? He always had a habit of attracting problems, so to speak, more mystical, more Eastern, like yoga.
Yoga.
That is how it was, to be
nu e
true.
așa. Asta e un adevăr. În timp ce frate, s-o să zic, cumpăra...
When his brother bought Madame de Bovary,
el cumpăra
he would buy books on ancient philosophy, Hindu philosophy, or Chinese philosophies.
Antică, de filozofia hindusă sau filozofiile astea chinezești.
A fost interesant.
It was interesting.
Zi mai tare, dragă.
Era de Rusalii și eram la liturghie la piariști.
It was Pentecost, and we were at Mass at the Piarists.
Și deodată la Florin i s-a făcut...
There were lots of people, and suddenly Florin felt weak.
Întâi,
Mirella was nearest to him, so she laid him in the side altar.
și pe urmă,
People told him to go outside, where Father Pintia soon appeared.
afară...
I didn't know him at the time. He was dressed in plain clothes.
Era îmbrăcat.
He told me, when he is well again, make sure he comes to me.
După ce se face bine, veniți cu el la mine.
He invited Florin to a separate room where they talked and recounted something to each other. Florin was visibly very moved when he came back.
Florin așa a venit foarte, foarte emoționat.
După câteva întâlniri, atât acasă la el cât și la biserică,
Gradually, after several meetings, at home as well as in church, a discussion group sprang up that with time began to organize outings that included a spiritual element. I later learned that he was a Greek Catholic priest. He prepared me for my general confession, and practically from that point onwards I rediscovered my ties with the faith, began attending Mass, celebrated also in his home, in his apartment. I can say that to a large degree it was thanks to him that I embarked on my journey to the priesthood. It was in a sense the beginning of my calling.
Și am început primele cursuri de teologie.
I began to study theology. I think it must have been around 1987-88. I was already an engineer working at a tools and fridge manufacturing company for the food industry. My working hours stretched from the morning until 3:30, and then from 4 o'clock I attended underground theology classes up until 8 o'clock. I gave up my engineering work by 1990 and devoted myself uniquely to my theology studies.
Și am rămas numai cu pregătirea pentru teologie.
Și apoi...
And after that, he became a priest. Talk more concisely.
Iarăși ceva drăguț.
He was ordained a
După ce
priest
l-a
in the main
simțit
square,
în piață,
near the
acolo la
Matei
statuia
Corvin
lui
monument.
Matei. După aceea,
When everybody
am
left,
plecat
we
cu
stayed
toată
behind.
lumea și am
Florin,
rămas așa,
my husband and me.
soțul și cu mine. Și zice,
My husband said,
soțul,
"You are a priest? I don't believe it."
tu știi că tu
And then
ești
Florin
preot.
looked at my husband and
Nu-mi
replied,
vine să cred. Și
"To
atunci
tell you the truth,
se
Dad,
uită așa
I
Florin
also
la
can't
soțul
believe it."
Și zice, să-ți spun drept, tată? Zice, nici mie nu-mi vine să cred.
Momentul hirotonirii a fost
The moment of my ordination was a very emotional time from many points of view. Firstly, from a year that numbered about 40 men, we were the first two to be ordained, following years of persecution. These were the first ordinations in our church, in a free country, and of course, because we had no cathedral, took place in the open air, in Freedom Square.
Pentru că nu aveam biserica catedrală.
It was September 1990, the year our church regained its freedom.
Chiar în anul eliberării bisericii noastre.
Când a venit Părintele Pintea pentru...
Then Father Pintia came to arrange the journey to Rome. He said, "This young man must go there, do some serious studying, because he will become a bishop one day." To which I said, "Oh, Father, why do you say so? It's out of the question. From amongst such a crowd of such bright people, he is not so religious." "No," he said. "Mark my words. You will see that my words will be fulfilled. He will become a bishop."
The truth speak the lips of a sinner.
A plecat la Roma.
He left for Rome.
On foot?
"Father, I ask you kindly to stop joking and interrupting me. These are very interesting matters." The two of us stayed behind, me and Marilla, and we accompanied him.
And where was I at the time?
I don't know where you were.
I drove him to Rome.
We were both in Florin's room, I and Marilla, and we felt a great emptiness and an exceptional burden.
Și așa simțeam un gol și o apăsare extraordinară.
We were the first generation to set out for Rome. Within 2 years, I did a bachelor's degree in Bible theology. I remember my first meeting with the Holy Father. Our bishops arrived on a visit, and a pontifical audience with the Pope was arranged. All student seminarists in Rome at the time were also invited. When the Holy Father approached me and I looked towards him, I couldn't speak. I didn't say a single word. My Metropolitan Archbishop whispered, "Say where you are from, who you are and what you are doing." Nothing would come out. I remained blocked and speechless. I don't know. I think that because this was my first meeting with the Pope in person, direct, but also because something in the way he looked at me softened me. It was a beautiful and moving moment.
După aceea am primit un telefon.
On my return to Romania, I received a telephone call from Janusz Bolonic, the papal nuncio.
Și mi-a zis,
During our conversation, he invited me to the nunciature. He said, "The Holy Father has appointed you a bishop." At the time, during that moment of total surprise, I said that I didn't know how to be a bishop and that there were so many better qualified candidates.
Am reținut o frază pe care nunțiul
I remember one sentence that the nuncio said,
mi-a zis, poți
"You
să
can do a
faci
lot of good."
foarte mult bine. Și asta
That
a
gave
fost
me something to
oarecum
think
fraza
about.
care, să zic așa, m-a
I
pus pe
asked for a
gânduri.
time to reflect at home,
I-am cerut,
but he said, "No,
să-mi lase un
you
timp
have
de
to decide
gândire,
now.
să mă întorc acasă.
Yes or no?
Mi-a zis,
It's
nu.
12 o'clock.
Acum
Go to the chapel.
trebuie să
Return
iei
at 12:30 with your
da
final
sau
decision."
nu. Este ora 12, te duci în capelă, la 12:30 vii și îmi spui exact decizia. Am intrat în capelă
I went to the chapel
și m-am
and I
uitat
looked at
la
Jesus in
Iisus
the Holy Sacrament.
în Sfântul Sacrament.
On the doors of the
Și pe
tabernacle
ușa
was the
aceea a
portrait of Jesus
tabernacului
smiling.
Era Iisus
That gave me
zâmbind,
courage.
cu zâmbet. Și aceea parcă mi-a dat curaj. Și după aceea mi-am dat seama
I
că, de
realized
fapt,
that the time
era
had come.
timpul.
And
Și
then I
atunci,
said,
sigur că
"Onward
am
with the
zis
Lord."
cu Domnul înainte. Hirotonirea a avut loc la Roma. Se fac exercițiile spirituale.
My consecration took place in Rome. I had to attend a retreat, prepare my vestments, priest clothing, but the most difficult matter concerned the mitre.
Mitra, am căutat pentru mitră.
We searched for the mitre in all of Rome's eastern colleges. One was too small, the other too large, yet another too big or too wide. None fitted. With the day of my consecration fast approaching, I asked the sisters of Saint Sophie to give me the mitre that usually graced the skull of the relic of Saint Josaphat.
Craniul relicvelor Sfântului Iosafat.
It was also a little too large, but I went to a tailor who duly inserted a piece of carton, after which it held quite well.
Și-au pus carton sub ea. Și stătea destul de bine. A doua zi am pornit de dimineață de
On
la...
the following morning, I left the collegiate and went to St. Peter's Basilica on
Era o zi
foot.
foarte frumoasă.
The day was beautiful, and the ceremony soon began. The procession into St. Peter's Basilica was very beautiful. I had the feeling of climbing upwards.
Mers pe în sus. Deci au fost două momente mai...
There were two exceptionally moving moments.
Primul moment a
The
fost
first was
când
when the Holy Father
Sfântul
placed his
Părinte
hands on me.
a pus mâinile. Al doilea moment a fost
The second
momentul în
moment was
care
when the Holy
Sfântul
Father
Părinte
handed
mi-a
us a
dat
bishop's insignia of
insignii
office.
episcopale. Și pentru
Because
că,
I am a bishop of the
fiind
Eastern
episcop
Church, I
oriental,
received far more
aveam mult mai multe
insignias than
insignii decât
others.
ceilalți, dar în clipa în care am urmat
Pope passed me
eu,
my
își mi-a
ring,
dat inelul,
then the
după aceea
chasuble
urma omoforul.
that one puts on one's shoulders.
Omoforul este ornatul care se pune pe umeri.
The Master of Ceremonies had up to then never dressed a bishop of the Eastern Church, so he didn't know how to put it on. He took the robe from the table, handed it to the Holy Father, and the Holy Father placed it on my head, but the wrong way around. Of course, I kissed the mitre the moment the Holy Father took it and put it on my head, but it fell back. At that moment, my ears proved a blessing, as I realized that somebody had removed the piece of cotton that the tailor had inserted on the inside. I began praying to God, lest the mitre should fall off my head at that moment. Later on, as we all embraced, I felt the mitre wobble on my head every time. However, everything turned out well in the end.
Biserica este a lui Hristos.
The church belongs to Christ. It isn't my church. It is his church. We do what we can as humans. Christ does all the rest.
Face Hristos. Eu cred că pentru a fi un bun slujitor
I believe
al
that to
lui
be God's
Dumnezeu,
servant,
preot
as a
sau
priest
episcop,
or bishop,
în primul rând trebuie să
one
faci
has firstly to
un bun
recognize God's
discernământ
will,
între ceea ce este voința lui Dumnezeu. Pentru
as
că
there is always much to do.
întotdeauna de lucru este foarte
The
mult.
ability to decide between the
Dar a
temptation
ști
of
să separi
self-affirmation
ceea ce este
as against fulfilling the true
foarte
needs of
proprie
one's
de
pastoral
afirmare,
ministry
de ceea ce
requires
este
a balanced
efectiv
approach,
nevoie pastoral,
which every
rămâne
priest must work out
un
for
echilibru
himself.
pe care preotul trebuie să-l stabilească.
We must
Trebuie
know
să
our
rămânem la
place
locul
and
nostru,
fulfill
deci,
our calling
prin
in all
smerenie, în
humility,
umilință, să ne
and
facem
then move
treaba
aside to
și
let
după
God
aceea
himself accomplish
să
his
ne
mission.
retragem, pentru ca Dumnezeu să-și poată împlini misiunea. Figură care m-a impresionat a fost
Bishop
figura
Ionel Suciu was someone who made a great impression on me.
Ionel Suciu,
He died in
care
Sighet
a
prison.
murit la Sighet. A murit în
Some people
închisoare.
say he had my
Unii
posture.
spun că era așa cam de
A
statura
little
mea,
thin
puțin
with
mai
a beard.
slăbuț, cu bărbiță,
He was a
dar
very
era un om
energetic
foarte
person,
dinamic, era un om
very
foarte
brave.
curajos. Un om care a
He
dat
supported the
Dumnezeu
arts, wrote books,
și culturii,
catechetical
scrierile
aids,
sale, a scris
prayer
cărți, a
books.
scris cărți de
Young
credință,
people liked him a
de
lot.
rugăciune,
He
tinerii
used to play
iubeau foarte
football with
mult,
them.
juca fotbal cu tinerii. O altă figură care
Yet another
cu cât
person,
citesc mai mult, cu atât
who the
mă
more I read
impresionează mai
about
mult,
him, the more
este
impressed I
sigur
become, is our
episcopul
diocesan bishop,
din,
who was the
partia
first
noastră,
Romanian
care a
national
fost
to
primul
become a cardinal,
al neamului românesc,
Bishop
episcopul
Iuliu Hosu.
Hosu. Dârzenia lui, lupta lui
His
pentru
bravery,
dreptate,
his
pentru
fight for justice and
unitate,
unity in
într-o
circumstances
conjunctură în
filled with
care,
many dangers,
existau multe pericole, atât
both
la
in the
nivel
national
național,
political domain as well as the religious,
la nivel
makes an
profesional.
enormous impression. He managed to maintain a righteous posture whilst his words remain a guiding motto for us all. It was the answer he gave in prison when he was called upon to join the Orthodox Church. He said, "I cannot because our faith is our life." And indeed, he showed by his life what the faith meant to him.
Și, într-adevăr, el a demonstrat prin viața lui ce a însemnat credința lui. Există momente pe care poate nu le înțelegem. Există momente de tensiune.
There are moments we are incapable of understanding. Tense moments, filled with difficulties that we have to deal with in relation to property, the state, government, or even the Orthodox Church. Though our greatest problem is most probably the continued lack of places to celebrate the liturgy, as well as of meeting places where people can talk freely and where we could organize catechism classes.
Care este visul meu?
What is my dream? I believe that every bishop's dream is to see his diocese fulfilled, young and growing, to see the cathedral standing and the theological college returned, as well as the secondary school building, to see catechesis progress swimmingly, to see all priests become saints, and the whole church head towards the salvation of souls.
Amin. Ceea ce este mai frumos în ministerul episcopal este atunci
What is most beautiful in a bishop's ministry is the moment you feel the satisfaction of a mission fulfilled.
misiunii împlinite.
To see an unhappy person come to confession and leave with a smile, or to feel that an ill person you have just been visiting has been consoled. Or during catechism classes, to see children looking at you wide-eyed, working with you and prepared to share their thoughts. In other words, when you feel able to pass on to others some of the grace you yourself have received.
Deci atunci când simți că din harul pe care l-ai primit reușești să transmiți celorlalți, dar cea mai mare satisfacție, eu cred că
I would judge that the biggest satisfaction for a bishop comes from pastoral work, and of course also the ordination of priests, when by the power of the Holy Spirit you can endow a person with the capacity to celebrate Holy Mass and listen to confessions. I think this is a great thing in a world that has such a need to be sanctified, a need for the Word of God.
De cuvântul lui Dumnezeu.
Cristina a păstrit și un pas studii.
Și la fiecare să pună place cum îmi place. Și atunci ne rugăm împreună. Spune-te rog, Sfântului, Tatălui și Fiului și Sfântului
pururea și în vecii vecilor. Amin.
Începe puțin să falseze ora, fi ceas mecanic. După aceea sunt două icoane ucrainene foarte interesante.
Aici nu știu dacă aveți din monitor oficial HTML din 28 decembrie 1948, unul împărțit statul, unul
és urál a kovászra. A Trocsán spórován, Ruberán, Olyra, Óra.
Ne-a schimbat soarta unei biserici prospere și luminoase, care a oferit atât de mult națiunii și poporului nostru, prin spiritualitate, prin cultură și formare. Liber. Nici? S-a trezit că are mâinile? Nu s-ar fi povestit. Super dificile ca să zis așa. Era Dumnezeu Tatăl. Ce spune Tatăl? Profesionist. Eu cum nu sunt profesionist, fotografiile mele sunt mai puțin mai sus. Preotul cred că trebuie să aibă
I believe that a priest should maintain a clear balance between action and prayer. As our Jesuit fathers tell us, be a contemplative in action and active in contemplation.
Și activ în contemplație. Am rămas de multe ori impresionat de rugăciunea unor persoane.
I was often impressed by how some people prayed. I was once in the convent of the Congregation of the Sisters of the Mother of God, where an old sister, who was probably hard of hearing, was praying in the chapel. I entered the chapel. The sister was kneeling in adoration in front of the Holy Sacrament. I remained in the back of the chapel, when I suddenly heard her pray aloud. The words she used touched me. It was something akin to a dialogue with a living person that she could ostensibly see before her. She said, "Dear Jesus, you know that I have come here for you. I have come here because I love you and because I have no one else." She said it with such great honesty that it made me realize that here was a truly personal experience, nothing stage managed. This was not theatre. Her bridegroom truly stood before her, the person for whom she took the veil.
Persoana pentru care ea a venit în acea mănăstire. Sfânta și dumnezeiasca liturghie.
The holy and godly liturgy is, I believe, a moment of fullness. The moment that Christ manifests himself on the table that is the holy altar, everything becomes insignificant. And the fact that you can give that bread and wine life is truly a unique act of grace.
Hristos în mijlocul nostru.
Într-o înțelepciune să ne mărturisim credința.
Cred într-un Dumnezeu,
I am always greatly moved when I think back to the first masses I celebrated, because I was always concerned lest I made a mistake. I believe that a priest should always experience emotions whilst celebrating Mass. He should feel a certain degree of fear before God. He should appreciate that God is truly present on the table, that is the holy altar. The moment you appreciate that fact, everything takes on the form of an active adoration. It is a presence that changes you. Everybody who accompanied me on my road, including those I could hold up as examples on my spiritual path, all took sustenance from the Holy Mass. I believe that, irrespective of everything that happens in our lives, from our inner battles through to our fight with sin, the Holy Liturgy remains an unbroken source of innumerable blessings for mankind. Climbing has taught me many things. In the first place, that ambition is a good thing, but only if its boundaries are defined. And that those times when, as the Gospel stipulates, you want to build a tall tower, you must assess your strengths well in order to determine whether you can build it at all. Climbing a mountain, passing through the full gauge of possible emotions, from the will to reach the top, to exhaustion, as well as the inevitable minor contusions which you experience in your contact with the rock face, are all opportunities. Opportunities to imagine that you are on your way up the cross, bearing the cross on your shoulders. You pray and get ahead of that moment. The moment we reached the Matterhorn's 4,250th meter at 9:30 in the morning, and the guide who accompanied me said that we had to turn back, we were only 200 odd meters from the peak, yet we turned back. And it was then that I learned the lesson of resignation. It is very good to have lofty ideals, but even better to recognize your limits. It is very important to know when to stop. When you feel that you can go no further, tell yourself, I can go no further. We stop for a moment, breathe, go on. I believe that our spiritual life is no different. It is important that we do not succumb to our own ambitions or the muddle of opportunities that this life has to offer. We should, from time to time, be prepared to stand back and say, stop, time to go to the Jesuits for a 2-day retreat, or longer if need be, to then return to the everyday refreshed and with a new lease of life. The world looks completely different from on high.
Uneori și viața spirituală este o ascensiune. Trebuie să urci.
Sometimes our spiritual life is also a climb. In your spiritual life, you must also climb upwards. You also need a guide. You need a good understanding of your limitations, and you need to be properly equipped, and that is right from the start. Having survived difficult moments, having looked down a precipice many thousands of meters deep, having hung on a rope attached to a few hooks, you begin to appreciate that in fact you are in God's hands. I have experienced several descents down vertical rock faces, when you in fact go down attached to a single rope. At one time, a rock projection resulted in the rope resting against it, whilst I had in fact lost contact with the rock face. And then the rope I was hanging on began to turn, and I had a panoramic view of the surrounding landscape in the void beneath me. I was undoubtedly free on the rope, suspended between heaven and earth.
Efectiv, liber, într-o coardă, suspendat între cer și pământ.
He who goes into the mountains somehow returns more beautiful inside, spiritually, perhaps even holier. Not only because he has been closer to God, because mountains are high, but also because there is an order to creation. The existence of a bountiful God, who gives us so many beautiful things, so many flowers, they are there for you, to give you joy. For that reason also the song of birds, and everything that you are capable of perceiving. From an alpine chamois, I don't know, treading lightly from rock to rock. These are all the joys that God unfolds before you. I think that God thereby speaks through nature. He bids you, go, discover, and see, for the birds and the butterflies, and the black alpine chamois, this I am.
Sunt eu.